It is just a huge honor today to be podcast interviewing three people that are very important to me. One is Hollie Bryant. We had her on the show, episode 441. She's the owner of Bryant Consultants, is a dental office consultant and marketing firm located in Kingsport, Tennessee. She's an amazing dental office consultant. She's great at marketing, great at growing your picture, but she's great at something else. The gentleman in the middle, who looks like he graduated from dental school in 2013, but actually 2003, Dr. Kevin Martin, DDS, who's here today to talk about how to keep staying so looking young. But the star of the show is, the other star of the show, who wasn't able to make it, Ken Colbush, the Henry Schein rep from Tennessee, who's legendary in this story. But the main show is the gentleman on the right, the handsome, bald guy, Dr. David Guy, DDS, graduated from the University of Tennessee College of Dentistry in 1977. He has over 40 years experience in dentistry. He was a solo practitioner for 34 years until this year. Back in February 13, 2019, a man entered his dental office in Kingsport, Tennessee, and fatally shot his office manager. The sheriff says Dr. Guy shielded someone with his body during the shooting and is a hero. Dr. David Guy and Hollie Bryant are here to talk about the shooting back in February, the journey of transition with his dental practice and where he is now. This is a story that will touch your heart, encourage you to get prepared for what life may throw your way, and the success that has come from Dr. Guy surviving this horrific event by making some major life decisions. The events that happened unraveled his practice and allowed the transition of a lifetime that took place in a matter of 7 days. The ability to pivot from tragedy and find out what he is really all about and what he's most passionate about and what he's going to do now. I got to start for the people who weren't reading this. It was all over social media. It was all over Dental Town. Dr. David Guy, what happened?
Well, like you said, it's Mr. Weaver and his wife were estranged from each other, and he just burst into the office early that morning without any warning, and all we heard was a bunch of commotion behind us, and that's when we saw what was going on. He was yelling. Kelly was saying, "Don't let him take me." And I stepped forward to talk to him and say, you don't want to do this. And so he had the gun in his hand and he pointed it directly at my face and said, "You want this?" And I said, "No." I backed up, and then it was a matter of just a few seconds. He fired shots, shot her in the head, while my assistant Sabrina was trying to help Kelly get away. They went to the floor. He shot her twice again. And then that's when I exited as fast as I could to call for help. A few minutes later, while we were placing a 911 call, we heard 3 more shots. And it turns out that my patient that I was treating at the time actually had a concealed carry permit, and he had his weapon on him, and he prevented Mr. Weaver from hurting anyone else. And that's when we came back in. I followed the SWAT team, as it were, behind him. I didn't get along with him, but I could hear all the action. And apparently my patient, Mr. Seagroves, was still holding the gun on Harry while he was on the ground. And the police yelled at him to drop his gun. And he did, but he is hailed as a hero, for sure. He's the true hero of all this story.
So when something like that hits you, I mean, you can't just go back to work tomorrow morning and act like it was another day. I mean, that would just have to emotionally knock your breath away. How did that affect you?
Well, the thing was, I was down to 3 days a week anyway, so that was a Wednesday. I had Thursday off, but I still had to go back into the office and try to make contact with my patients who were scheduled later next week and such. And I spent a lot of time there just pondering those Thursday and Friday. And that was when I got a message from Tim Martin, DDS, who happens to be Kevin's father. On the 15th, he sent me a text message, or actually an email, saying that he was shocked to hear what happened, that he was appalled by it, and he couldn't imagine what I was going through. But he said also that we just can't let you end your practice because of this incident. So he said he'd help me in any way he possibly could. And that was one of the things that gave me some instant hope.
It's also a time when you find out who your friends are. I notice when you're rich and famous and you're, selling out stadiums and you're famous athletes and all that stuff, you're a hero. But when your whole world collapsed, you get to see who your close friends was. Is that how you would describe it?
Yes, had a deluge of different people just calling or leaving messages and just expressing their sorrow and their desire to be able to help, including the director. I was working on Thursdays and Fridays actually at a place called Friends in Need, where we treat people with low income. And the director called me actually on Thursday, 2 hours after the incident, to ask me if I was okay. He didn't know it was my office for sure, but I informed him that it was. He said, well, then you'll not be able to work on Thursday. And I said, maybe I could. I was still kind of...
He was in shock.
I was shocked. Yeah, I was in shock. But turns out that he and quite a few other people just were doing all they could to say, whatever you need, let us know. We will help you.
I'm going to ask you, this is Dentistry Uncensored. I'm going to ask you a tough question, and if you don't want to answer, just pass. But, when you meet people who met unbelievable events like this, sometimes the biggest part of it is they're trapped in the anger. Was anger a big part of overcoming, or was it your emotional, or was anger a big part of the challenge of getting over this?
No, anger was not part of it at that time. I was focused on the idea that I've got to find a way to get back to work, to take care of my patients, and to make sure that my employees that were with me still had a job to do as well. And so I was focused on that and trying to figure out how I was going to be able to do it.
So to know David is to know that his heart is so big. And I don't know if he has an angry bone in his body. And, Kelly was a longtime friend outside of work, and Harry Weaver was 30 years of a friend for David and his family. So, this thing was so deep. And it had so many levels to what it was, the actual shooting itself. But David did something really cool, that instinct kicked in. And without direction, he put a voicemail on his phone at work to let everybody know that that they would take the next 2 weeks to figure out what the next step was, but to hang with him and he would keep everybody posted.
Well, I guess what I meant by that, the anger deal was like, I had an office receptionist for 20 years, and she used to work at Chase Bank, but it got robbed, and someone stuck a gun in her face, and she could never enter that building again. And then I had another patient where someone broke in her house and just stole jewelry and things like that, but she could not enter that house again. I mean, it was a violation. One was a workplace violation, one was a home violation. So I was wondering, like, did you have staff that said, I'm sorry, but I can't work in this building again?
Well, that was pretty evident after we got the dust kind of settled. And I was thinking, yes, I will go back in this space. I'll clean it up. I actually hired somebody to do the cleaning. But I was sure by the third or fourth day, I said, this is not going to work for my staff or my patients. It wouldn't be good for me. I would try, but I think it was quite obvious that I needed to find a change of venue one way or another.
So how long did it take you to decide that you realized, okay, this book, the chapter is closed. We're going to leave this location and we're going to move on? How long did that take?
That was probably by the 15th. The end of the 15th, 2 days later, 48 hours, I'd gotten a letter from Tim, and I had talked to other people, and I said, this can't be the place I stay. And The one good thing about it was the fact that I was on a month-to-month lease basis. So I didn't have to worry about the rent if I decided to leave. I just had to get out as quickly as possible.
Well, it's they always say that leaders are the ones that rise to the occasion, and they say in at the Pentagon that the first casualty of war is always the battle plan. And so I commend you that you were able to keep your head together, and that within 48 hours you could make a long-term strategic decision, because obviously many of us dentists listening to this podcast, that would not be the case.
I want to tell you, one of the things that made it possible was the fact that I had discussed things with Ben Kolbish, the situation that we had. And I said, I know I've got to make plans. I got to do something. And that's when Ben said, well, I've been on the phone, or at least texting back and forth with this gal named Hollie Bryant, and she may be able to be your best first step in making that come about. And incidentally, I had just sometime during the day gotten a request to be friended by somebody named Hollie Bryant. And I said, who the heck is Hollie Bryant? And so anyway, Ben answered that question for me.
I mean, when I look at you and you look at me, was your first thought is she has too much good hair on her head? Was that a red flag?
Well, I didn't get to see her for several days to begin with, so I had no idea what she looked like. But she was a ball of fire when we talked on Wednesday the 20th. That's actually was the...
So, Hollie, of all the dental offices that you've consulted with over the years, what could prepare you for a situation like this?
I wasn't prepared. I came in to just sit and talk to David and talk to Jane and hear their story about where they were on the 12th of February before the shooting, and just get to know them as people and as friends, and figure out what he wanted for his life way before the shooting. And then after I sat with David and Jane on a Saturday, we sat for hours just talking. I was very honest. I said, I don't have a plan. I don't know what the plan is. I'm going to pray about the plan. But I got a lot of people who want to help you, like a lot of people. And David was like, what are you talking about? I said, I've had people, because they knew that I was from your area. They wanted to know if there was something they could do to donate their time. And I started naming to David a list of people that would help and give their time, because remember, there's a business that's still existing, even though there's a 2-week period of reprieve. There was still insurance checks coming in, money that needed to be put in, claims that needed to go out, accounts that needed to be monitored, while we were a 34-year business that still had to run, even though patients weren't walking in the door, while we were figuring out where he's going to go, what kind of plan he was going to have, who would want to be a part of this. And then at the end of that, if he was going to do it, we would have to close up a 34-year business, and we would have to create contracts. There was just like a million layers to this. So I just told him, I said, there's so many people that want to help. Mary Beth Brashonis and the dental support specialties team, they wanted to do all of his claims support for free. And they wanted to log. Are you sure
it's Mary Beth's idea, or is it her husband Joe's idea?
It's probably Joe's.
It's Joe's. He makes the best barbecue in the entire country. It's a better sounding story if we say it was Joe's idea, not Mary Beth's.
It's probably Joe's idea, and they were like, whatever he needs, tell me. And then Tony Myers with the Truth Consulting, he was like, whatever document support for any kind of transition, I got you covered. So I had all these people saying, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Let me do something. So I even had a branding company that said, what can I do for him for his new brand? I want to do it. So
wow.
Of really cool people just stepping up to the plate to help. So did I have a plan? No. Prayed about the plan. And then I called Kevin. And I said, Kevin, I'm in this thing knee deep, and this gentleman is full of life and amazing, and his patient base is beautiful, and there's something here. I don't know what it is yet. Would you just sit down and talk to me? And Kevin said,
Sure.
he said, I'll trust you, Hollie. I don't know either, but he said, I'll trust you. So Kevin and I have been friends for probably maybe a decade.
Probably. Yeah.
And he had multiple practices in the area, and he just was willing to talk about it. And there was just a whole lot of pieces all falling into place that you couldn't deny that it was the right series of decisions.
So David Guy was friends with Tim Martin, who is Kevin Martin's father.
Yep, they went to dental school
He's
together.
also a dentist.
Well, he graduated just before I got there.
Oh, he graduated just before David got
I knew
there.
his sister from high school too. So.
It's a small
It was
world.
a small town.
You dated his sister from high school?
No,
No,
we
no.
were in the band together. We were friends.
They were
Oh,
friends.
friends. Wow.
Yeah.
So, dentistry has a community, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's a huge community. It's an amazing, I scream to my doctors about asset protection. I scream to doctors about staying involved in your study clubs, because you need these people. You need community. You need a sense of belonging, and you never know what life's going to bring you, right?
Well, Kevin, you being, young enough to be a child, me and David, do you think that David's and your dad's generation of dentists, do you think they had a tighter community than modern day community, or do you think it's the same? Because, or do you think it's the same, or do you think what you saw was old school, or do you think it still lives today and is new school?
I think I think it's different. I mean, I think nowadays what we're seeing, as you see, is that community now is not getting together for a in-person meeting a lot of times. It's all social media. It's all, internet interactions. But, like I said, my dad practiced dentistry for 40 years and retired a couple of years ago. But, our advantage is that we live in a small community. I grew up in this community. My dad grew up in this community. We've gone to church together with Dr. Guy for what?
Since '86 at least.
So it was a easy decision, one, as a dental community, to say we got to help him. But I've known him for years. He's an excellent dentist. He takes care of his patients. I think one of the things that they didn't mention, David's not going to brag. No, I wouldn't say brag on himself, but after this happened, he personally called all of his patients that were scheduled to reschedule them and tell them. And I don't think most of us would do that. He was there every day after this happened at his office. So it was an easy decision for us to say, we'll do whatever we need to do to help him. And fortunately, and like I said, I've known Hollie for a long time. I know she gets it done, and she gets it done quick. But we have probably the biggest office in the area, and we're able to accommodate that. And it was it was an easy decision that took a few seconds to say, yeah, we'll more than happy have him. And I tell you, it's been one of the best decisions we've ever made, because our staff loves him, our patients love him, his patients love him. And my dad retired 2017? My dad retired a couple of years ago, and I tell him, for a little while I was the old guy, but now it's like bringing my dad back, and he gets to take care of all the patients. But it's great to have that generation of doctor back in the office that really knows how to take care of patients and cares for the patients. So it's been a tragic thing for everybody, but it's actually been a blessing for everybody as well.
Every time I talk to a dental malpractice attorney, they always say, and the research is very clear, it's the same dentists and physicians that keep getting all the claims. And the reason the patients called the malpractice attorney is because the dentist didn't call them. The dentist didn't return their phone call. I see it on Dental Town. People will say, "Oh, I just got this letter from a patient. Should I call my dental malpractice person?" It's like, no, you should call the patient first.
You pick the phone up.
One of my first episodes of why I didn't get sued is this guy was so upset. I called his wife, and his wife said, "Oh, Howard, he's too mad. He won't come to the phone." And I said, "Well, you're only 1 mile from my office, and it's 7:00. I'm going home. Can I stop by?" And she goes, "I would not recommend that." And I said, "Okay, I'll just be in the driveway for 5 minutes." And I went there. I parked in the drive. 5 minutes. I sat in their car, and he came out, and we had a big heart. Anyway, long story short, he thought he didn't have gum disease, and he, and all this story back. But anyway, the bottom line is they're all humans, and you just need to talk. And the thing I can't stand about social media is even in your own workplace, you'll see an email going back 4 or 5 times. You're like, will one of you monkeys just stand up and walk to the other cubicle? I mean, why? Some things just deserve face to face. And if you say you can't figure out a problem and you've emailed the guy 5 times and you've texted him 4 times and the guy is standing within 100 feet of you, you need to see a doctor. I mean, there's something seriously wrong with your walnut brain. So I always wonder if that's what I mean when I'm saying old school as opposed to the new generation. But I got to say one thing for sure. You always know when the Supreme Court is upset because they'll do like 3 cases in a row trying to educate the people what they're trying to say. And Harvard Business Review keeps coming out with studies saying that everything you say is the difference between boomers and millennials. You do know there's no evidence for any of this. So every time they take something, they do the polling, they do the survey, and millennials, they have the same views on religion, politics, everything. I mean, so we're supposed to not... We're not supposed to say, if you say all people do one thing, it's racist. Like, you can't say all Irish bald guys are handsome because there might be one that's not. I mean, you just never know. So Hollie, thanks for being his friend. Thanks for rolling your sleeves up. So what was your first, what was your first decision plan? How did the decision tree look like? What did you decide first and what did you do next?
Well, the first decision was to stay or go. And
stay or go?
Stay in this building and make it work or go. And he said, I can't stay here. My team can't stay here. We can't stay here. So that was number one was, but I guess a little bit before that, the prerequisite was, are you done with dentistry? Because I couldn't imagine David being done with dentistry. But David had to make that decision. Is this where you end? Because he's had a great career. 69?
68.
68. He's 68.
He's 68 years old?
Yep.
I graduated in dental school the year Kevin was born.
Oh my gosh, 1977?
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually,
Holy
say that was probably the first decision was, David, does this tragedy make you want to be done? Are you done?
And you're 68.
Yep.
I'm 68.
And you knew you had to keep going because Mother Teresa was 69 when she won the Nobel Prize for her work. So unless you're six, what's that?
It never occurred to me about Mother Teresa.
Yeah, I went there. I lectured right up the street from her birthplace, and I think it's Macedonia. I think the country's name has changed a few times. But so what made you decide that you weren't done? Because you had to easy out. You could just say,
that was tragedy. I'm hanging it up.
I'm done.
And I didn't want him to be done, but he had to decide that.
Well, it was kind of like the same thing Tim said. I couldn't let that incident be the instigating factor in me quitting dentistry.
Absolutely.
I wanted to do my own terms.
Yep.
Not somebody else.
So he made that decision, and then the next decision was stay or go. Do we clean this up? Because just so you know, I'm sure you've watched every cop show there is. They got to come in and collect the evidence. So all the bullets that went off in the office during the shooting, they had to go get them. So they had to dig through the walls and get the bullets. So there was lots of digging that had happened in the practice. And then, unfortunately, like when blood and puddles of blood hit the floor and it soaks up in the drywall, they got to cut all that out. So it was a crime scene. And I told David his patients didn't deserve to come back there. And I don't think they could heal. I don't think our community could heal if he went back there. So at that point was when I started reaching out to find somebody who would want to buy the practice, because it was a practice for sale. So it wasn't just a goodwill thing. There was a practice for sale. So
in Kingsport, Tennessee.
Yeah.
But that's what's the population of that town?
That's about 44,000?
50,000.
50,000.
So that's not so small that everyone knows everyone, but the dentists probably all know each other.
But no one wants to but East Tennessee is trees and mountains, and if you want a Banana Republic, you got to go like 2 hours away. It's not like,
a Banana Republic. You're not that close to Washington D.C.
I think you're about a
Oh my gosh, you're a lot farther than Washington D.C. than 2 hours. How long does it take you to drive to the world's largest Banana Republic in Washington D.C.?
6.5 hours.
Okay. So you put the practice up for sale, and were you thinking maybe a merger and acquisition, someone that already had a practice would buy it up, or some new graduate?
That's the only thought I had, was merger acquisition at this point. Like, we had to go fast. This was not.
But Hollie, why is Wall Street completely based on mergers and acquisitions, and why does dentistry almost never utilize that tool? And why was it your first thought? It's so counterintuitive in our sovereign profession of dentistry.
So for me, that's common sense. So I'm not a dentist, so that's common sense for me. For you guys, it's not common sense. It's like, ooh, somebody, merging with me. But at that point, we wouldn't have a location for someone to buy him. So it was a patient base. It was accounts receivable. It was his goodwill. It was him, because I needed somebody to buy him. Yeah. Look at him. He sings going down the hallway.
Okay, but if he sells to someone in Kingston, they're not going to want him in Kingston.
Oh, we wanted him in there. We wanted to sell.
So you wanted to sell his practice while he still practiced dentistry in Kingston in a small town of 50,000?
Sure did.
How does that even remotely go down?
It went down.
But how? And did both parties? Was it a win-win?
Oh, Kevin, it was a win. Was the best, one of your top 5 moves in dentistry? Probably one of his top 5 moves.
Well, his best move was just waiting not to be born until 1977. I commend you for that. That was being born in 62. That was the worst idea I ever had. So tell us what, so you owned a couple other practices just in that small town of Kingsport,
yes. So Kevin owned a couple practices. David's practice was probably 2 miles from one, 5 miles from another, maybe 10 miles from one. And it was just
more like a quarter mile from one.
Oh, one of them was a quarter mile. Sorry. Quarter mile.
It was close enough that when the story came out, everybody assumed it was our office.
Yes.
So it was.
Yeah, he had all the same.
But let's talk about that. There's not a dentist listening to this that gets what Wall Street gets, what you got of M&A. What made you buy a dental office a quarter mile from your office?
It was one of those things that, like I said, we were in the position to make it happen, and we were going to make it happen however we needed to make it happen. But we had the space to bring him in and keep him in the office, and so it was really just a
trust.
It was a trust, but it was an expansion.
It was a step of faith. Huh?
Yeah.
So you closed down 150 Cliffside Private Drive, or you sold that to someone else, or did you buy that?
That like I said, the rent was month to month, so he.
So basically, what he did was Kevin bought the dentist and gave him an associateship. Kevin bought the patient base, the accounts receivable, the equipment. We donated some equipment, and we hauled ass out of there in 5 days?
Yeah.
5 days. So we
Good
shut up.
at you guys. That is amazing to go from absolute rock bottom tragedy to 5 days. You got to plan and busted a move while
Yes,
singing the Clash song, Should I Stay or Should I Go? You decided.
We shut a business of 34 years.
40 years.
40 years of solo practicing down. Closed it up. Like, you know, if you closed your business, you got a checklist of like 50 things you got to do. Your vendors, your every software company, your materials, your supplies, your chairs, your landlord, your utilities, you name it, we did it.
She's very good at making lists to do.
That is just and that's what consultants do so well. I mean, the dentist, you know, their wheelhouse has a set of skills, but they're not they don't cover everything from A to Z. They don't even cover 1%. I mean, it's like an arc, you know, just
Yeah. So our cool thing, so we were shutting up practice of 40 years down. We were selling. So we had contracts to do. We were getting a buyer. We were keeping a practice going. So Mary Beth and them were helping us keep all the money coming in and keeping the bills go out. And then we were negotiating. And then Kevin was over here going, I got to put him somewhere. So Kevin started construction.
Gotta make a space.
And then we had to do a computer, basically a computer merge so that we could adapt an EagleSoft database into an Open Dental database.
okay. Who had the Open Dental and who had the EagleSoft?
Open Dental is Kevin.
Good job, Kevin.
Wait a minute. He
And
didn't
let me
have,
guess. Let me guess. The old guy had the EagleSoft.
was actually Dentrix. I apologize. But he had Dentrix.
Okay, so he's not old enough to be on EagleSoft. He was just old enough to still be on Dentrix. Okay,
Right.
that's
So
that's my joke slam.
he said at least it wasn't 3-star dental. Do you know that one,
No,
Howard? Okay.
3-star dental.
That's forever ago.
Well, the thing is about Dentrix and EagleSoft and whatever. It's just the new millennials aren't gonna do closed systems. I mean,
Nope.
A closed system is all for the seller and nothing for the buyer. And with Open Dental, I can hire some high school kid who's learning how to program from, seriously, I know 5 kids that program entirely, and all their training was programming for dummies. You've seen those yellow books, programming for dummies, and then get on your Open Dental, and that mom says, "Hey, I wanted to do this," and a high school punk kid who read one book, Programming for Dummies, gets in there and fixes it. And Dentrix and EagleSoft, no, you're not allowed to do that, and they'll hire a bunch of employees to make a bunch of walls around it to make sure you can't do it, yet you're the customer.
So our final piece of this was, you know, I'm giving you so many layers, but the final layer was to not forget Kelly, his office manager for so many years, who had such a beautiful spirit, and every patient, she knew them, she loved them, they loved her, they were like family. So we had to create a legacy for her. And we had to give David something that he could do and he could talk about every day to mourn with his patients, but to remember her spirit and to allow them to all heal. So we come up with a marketing idea that was close to David's heart, and it gives him a beautiful gift to give his patients every day. So it was a pretty neat experience for sure. One I never ever want to do again, ever.
I just again, I think the most bizarre part of this story is how you didn't have anger. I mean, you knew both of these people. This one guy, Harry, caused this whole nightmare, and yet for some reason in your heart, anger is not the first place to go. But what % of the 8 billion people on Earth would anger be the first place they go and stay there for a very long time? What % of the planet? 8 billion.
I would say at least 75%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 out of 4, they'd go right to anger. How did you get rid of anger?
Well, I think I submerged it, and I focused on what I needed to focus on, which was taking care of myself, my patients, my staff. And it's like when Kelly, Hollie, and I and Kevin were talking in my little break room, she asked me, what is it you want? I said, I want us to make an arrangement where everyone wins. I want to keep working. I want my staff to have the ability to work. I want to have my patients in a safe location where they feel good about coming to. And I want Martin Dentistry to benefit because they made a step of faith for me, and I want to do the same thing for them. I want to return that gesture so that I want to be part of something that I'm contributing to, just not hanging on.
Wow. So that's amazing. So how is it working with a instead of being the owner dentist, now you're an employee for a dentist who looks like he just got out of dental kindergarten school? How does that work? How does that work from being the big guy to now the little guy to a really big guy who's only 12?
Well, I don't mind being the old man in the place. I'm just like the grandfather image anyway. So, yeah. But I'll tell you that I've never been happier in my professional career than I am right now.
And why is that? Why is that? What was it?
Well, for one thing, we have great people here. It's a positive attitude, and I feed on that positive attitude. And I just love seeing my patients too. There's so many of them that have become friends over the years, and this makes it easy for me.
I hired my first associate like an hour after I opened up I graduated May 11, opened up September 21, 87. And of course I was so dumb. Did I hire a wise older man like you and me to show us the ropes? No, I was so young and dumb. I wanted a buddy from dental school. So I hired another 24-year-old. It was two kids. It was me and Bob Savage. Neither of us knew anything. We just knew we were having fun. But I have always said, I've always observed my whole life that solo practicing dentists just don't look like they're having as much fun as group. I mean, who are you going to talk about apicoectomies, root canals? Who would even get a bone grafting joke? I mean, you're a dentist, and you were in 8 years of college hanging out with all these dentists, and now you were alone. And so do you think just group practice is psychologically more fun and healthy than solo loneliness?
I imagine it depends on the group, how the people work together. But that's the thing about this. I had some trepidation to begin with. I was a little anxious, how am I going to fit into this? Can I keep up the pace? That kind of thing. But everybody has been great, and got a couple of even younger fellows, Dr. Hillman and Dr. Ledford, who are 28 and 38, something like that. And I'm enjoying learning from them. It's a great thing.
I'm looking at Kevin's biceps, wondering, does he just pull the teeth with his fingers, or does he actually use an elevator? Do you just reach in and just pluck them out?
I just look.
Mine aren't so bad.
I just look at them.
Bye-bye.
Nice.
David's the super healthy one.
So, Hollie, I always hear that the reason group practices don't have as much efficiency is because you're never going to get Kevin and David and all those guys to agree on one bonding agent, one set of. I mean, I see reps all the time that are saying these guys complain about their overhead on their supplies, but every dentist needs a different bonding agent. They all need different gloves. They all, it's just crazy. Is that the same problem you see? Like for instance, I know this. I know the limit that would push you to the edge. And that is when you walk into a group practice, you say, these are the only 5 burrs you can use for a filling or a crown prep. There's only 5. There will never be 6. What percent of dentists at that point would just implode? It'd be like the witch on the Wizard of Oz. She would just melt. Yep. I mean, I would quit. I'd quit. I'd fire myself. I can't do a crown prep with 5 burrs. So how do you reconcile those problems?
I think a little bit of that is, I think there's things that are super important to a group practice. And then I think there's things that are always negotiable. Basic fundamental systems, basic likability and compatibility with the dentist, basic cohesive spirits of why they're all there and what they want to do, what they're all trying to achieve. If that's expressed, if there's the likability amongst the crowd, then that makes things better. And then the really big things that are important, how we treat our patients, the values-based system, how patients should enter into the practice. All those are super critical systems that are must-haves. Basic overall bonding techniques and adhesives, yes, that should be unified. But what burr this doctor likes versus what burr that doctor likes, that's individuality of their craft. So when you blend it and you blend it in the right way, you can have an amazing group practice that's thriving and that's got the name in town. Or we can go the opposite way. And the opposite way is when everybody feels like they have handcuffs and no one feels any level of autonomy, then, you know, it's just a bunch of brothers and sisters bickering in a room, right?
That was poetry. So you're saying the most important thing a dental office has to have is that every team member respects their other team members in a likable, friendly, cohesive way, and that's non-negotiable. And then the negotiable thing is what burrs and bonding agents.
Right. But when you look at those things, then, you know, if everybody's got the same spirit, we're all coming together every day for a purpose. But then there's also, you know, group practice that's cutthroat. He stole my patient. He stole my patient. He stole my patient. The one thing I think Kevin Martin's really good about is there are patients. It's, you know, if somebody can help them, let's help them. Not, don't take mine, don't take mine, don't take mine.
Well, you know, you're either customer focused, and I know dentists don't like to call them patients, and I don't like the word patient because the word comes from, I need you to be patient in this room while you wait because I'm busy. That's where the word came from.
I love customers because the customer is what we really have.
So you ask these dentists, are you customer focused or are you looking in the mirror narcissistically dentist focused? And they always look at you and they believe in their Cretan walnut brain. Oh, I'm customer focused. I'm like, okay, well, you're closed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And you don't take emergency calls. 8.5% of emergency room visits are odontogenic in origin. And then it gets even worse. A person calls in and says, yeah, I broke my tooth. Can I come in? And you're like, well, no, because Dr. Gary's here today, but you're Dr. Kevin's patient, and he doesn't work till next Friday. And it's like, man, if I'm the patient, I mean, it's like if I'm on the way to the hospital to have my appendix removed, I don't really care if it's Kevin or Gary or your dad, Tim, who hasn't seen a patient in a year. I need you to all focus on me, the customer. And when dentists tell me they're customer focused, I can't tell if it's an inside joke or if they actually believe it. But how do you have a dental office focused on the individual need of that patient while you're saying, well, this is my patient, that's your patient? You're not. I mean, how do you do that?
You don't. So the best way to find out if a dentist is customer focused is to ask him how he would handle that malpractice letter from an attorney if that a patient complains. Patient's going to send you to the board. How are you going to handle that? Do you call your attorney first or the patient first? Nice. Now you know if they're customer focused or if they're me focused.
Yeah, even though you're from Tennessee, I was born in Kansas. That was a very Kansas, down-to-earth answer. I mean, when someone's mad at you, if your first urge is to call an attorney, I mean, you're not from Kansas. I mean, you go over there. And I can tell you in Kansas, because I heard this all the time, that the largest Amish Mennonite population in the United States is not in Pennsylvania where everybody talks about it. It's actually in Kansas. And my gosh, when a tornado comes and knocks them all down, they all go to that barn 18 hours a day around the clock until it's done. Yep. I mean, that's just how they roll. I mean, no one says, I didn't want this to happen. It's like, well, we're past that. It happened. And I love the way, Hollie, that when this tragedy happened, first thing you did is got in your automobile and showed up live and in person.
I think the whole community showed up for David. And I think David's heart is what he's worked on for 40 years in the Tri-Cities area of just showing up for other people, volunteering at Miles for Smiles, Friends in Need. He showed up and become a piece of the community that who wouldn't want to help him? Who wouldn't want to be right there on the front lines with him? You know, what can I give you? What can I do? Every person, every vendor we called to close up their accounts, they were like, what can we do? Yeah. They would, I mean, anything they could do. Holston Gas, was it Holston Gas who refunded all your tanks?
It's Gibson.
Gibson's.
Yeah.
Gibson's, not Holston Gas. Our nitrous company and oxygen company, they refunded every one of his tanks to him because they needed to do something.
And they wouldn't let me pay the outstanding
bill. They wouldn't
bill.
let him pay the outstanding bill. They just needed to do something. How can I show up for you? And all I've got to give you is this. And that was their part. How, I mean, just...
Go back to Henry Schein though. What did Henry Schein? What did Ben Kolbush do? Because I know Stan Bergman, the CEO of Schein. I've met the guy. But let me say one thing about Stan Bergman, because you can say anything you want about him, but 3 times in my life I've signed up for some missionary dental trip. And they weren't always pure reasons. I mean, I went to Africa, but I really wanted to climb Kilimanjaro and see, but we hit but anyway, long story short, 3 times in my life, I've been in the middle of a jungle, nowhere, cut off the grid, all that, and found a dental office decked out like it was my own. And sure enough, it was Stan Bergman and Henry Schein built that thing. And I got to tell you, the most hilarious video I ever made in my life. I told these kids in Tanzania, Africa, I said, my buddy Stan, he's the one who built this dental office. So I want, it was all these orphans. I said, I want you to all tell Stan, I forgot what, anyway, but I said, I want you to all tell him thank you and all this stuff. Well, they're Tanzanian. So I said, okay, 3, 2, 1. So I said, so tell Stan thank you. And they all started singing, happy birthday to Stan. They didn't even know where I was coming from. So I know that Schein has a huge culture of, the human comes first. And so talk about Ben from Schein.
So Ben was David's sales rep for how many years?
4 or 5.
At least 4 or 5 years. And Ben is just an enormous caring human being in general, very good Christian man, and would always come in and really, how are you doing and what can I do for you? And just a caring person. So Ben had called to check on David and ask what he could do. And David was, he didn't know what he could do.
Now, we had been talking already for several months previously about how I was going to transition into selling the practice and just working as Friends in Need only for a while.
So him and Ben, for many months before, were talking about selling the practice, but never made a move on it. So Ben works with some of my other clients in the region, and Ben called me one night, and he said, I don't know what all you can do, but I think you're the person who could do it. So would you let me give David your name, and can we set up a meeting and you just talk to him and see what you can do? So relationships matter. They matter a lot. And especially in this incident, that it was a lot. It was a relationship thing. So Ben put this person together with this person and said, just talk. And that's how that started. I
want to tie this in, if I can, to another type of tragedy. Remember, it was about a decade ago, a tornado hit Springfield, Missouri, and wiped out not only a dozen dental offices, but knocked out their home, too. I mean, these dentists lost their office, their home. A lot of them lost everything. Hollie, when you were looking at this, did you have any thoughts on, should you have office overhead insurance? Did he have some insurance product that he should have had or didn't have well enough, or
ability with equipment?
We talked about all of that because we had to go through and obviously his dental assistant went into a very mental break It was a very tragic experience for her, and David needed to figure out how to help her, and they needed to find out how they could have help. And if there was something that the building or the owners of the building or David or who could do something. So David and I went through all of his policies and learning those inside and out. And lots of loopholes and looking at all the loopholes. And I'm blessed to have attorneys in my family that were able to be my consultant on that. And it's one of those things that this does tie into asset protection and liability that I tell every doctor that I work with or don't work with. If I could tell you one thing, that the level of coverage you had when you got out of dental school is not the level of coverage you should have now. You have to look at those policies. You have to assess them on an annual basis. If you're a growing, thriving business, you should have more coverage, correct? But there's so many of these kids that get out of school and 10, 20 years down the road, they've just been paying the premium. They've never had to use it. They forget it's there, and they have no idea what that coverage is. None.
So you wish he would have had better. What do you wish that he would have had differently on his insurance?
Oh my gosh, I wish he would have had more protection. I wish he had had more protection on his practice. I wish he had had more protection on obviously the assets of the practice, and I wish he would have had some tail policies for disability, and that way he could be covered. And his whole, I mean, there were so many things, but who knew until you've been through it to go back and look and say, in hindsight. So it definitely was a whole nother level to that.
And David, when we're talking to millennials who, again, when Harvard Business Review, when they take anything that people say, like when people say, oh, you millennials, they don't cook. Well, there's zero evidence for that. And you say, oh, they don't go to church. Okay, well, there's zero evidence for that. Every slam Harvard Business Review, they keep doing article after article. And again, you know why they keep doing it is because everybody keeps thinking there's a ghost there that's not a ghost. What would you tell... most all of our viewers of this show are still in dental kindergarten school. They're all under 30. What would you tell them how to maintain a community in dentistry, about how you never know when a line drive pitch is going to hit you right between the eyes and you're going to wish that all those people you never wanted to go to a meeting with, now you need them?
Well, you have to find... For one thing, be part of the community itself so that you're having people there that care about you. But also, in order to have a good plan, you have to have, I think, somebody who can advise you on how to do things. And if you can find a consultant that you trust and can give you advice, that will be one of the best things you could possibly do.
And every time I see someone in a whole bunch of trouble, they were Dr. Know-It-All. I always tell a story about a dentist who was leased this little 1,000 square foot in a big old 10,000 square foot center, and the roof started leaking 3 doors down into his dental office. Turns out that the yoga lady left, everybody left because the lease said you had to pay for the roof. So that dentist had to fix the roof of a 10,000 square foot building. And I say, well, who was your real estate attorney? What idiot signed off on that? Oh, I did it myself. I'm a doctor of everything. Some people have a DDS degree. That's a doctor of dental surgery. I have a DOE, a doctor of everything. And they don't have any they don't have any friends or they don't have anybody that can stand up. And it's really weird that the greatest CEOs, they try to hire every employee they want smarter than them. Why would you want to be the smartest person in the room if you're signing the payroll? If I'm signing the payroll, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. And these young millennials, you want your best attorney. So again, be more specific. How can a young 25-year-old dentist who's an associate somewhere be more involved in the dental community?
Volunteering.
Gosh, yeah. You're right. Volunteer work.
We kind of tell people, give a day a quarter. Go take somebody's teeth out. Go to the clinic.
Give a day a quarter?
Every quarter, go give
Oh.
one 8-hour day of your life and help people who are less fortunate. Stay humble. Stay humble. Go to your dental society meetings. Show up to keep the group alive, but show up to learn from people who are smarter and older than you.
And I recommend missionary dentistry because it's the only time in my career I've been able to drink all day while I'm doing dentistry. You just can't do that in the United States.
Oh my God.
But
I knew you would say that. But community involvement's huge. Getting to know people, huge. Because it makes you feel included. And the young guys that are out there, if they don't feel included, that's the millennial population. I need to feel like people like me. So this would definitely feed into their likability if they were participating in their societies and they were volunteering. They would feel that warm, fuzzy likability that they would need. And they could totally Instagram it and Facebook it just so people saw how cool they were. But it would make them feel included in something that's bigger, higher, and more than they are. Because the opposite effect that's happened, and I've watched it happen so much over the past 5 or 6 months, and I've saved a lot of practices, Howard, are the ones that try to stand alone on their own. And they have mental breakdowns. They have emotional issues. You know, they get divorced. I know how you feel about divorce. They get, you know, they end up having vices.
I have 3.8 million things to say about divorce.
I know you do. That's all right. This isn't a divorce show. But they, you know, they start taking pills. They start drinking. They start doing naughty, dirty habits that get them caught.
Stop getting personal about my divorce.
I know, right? But it's that you're either going to feel included or you're going to feel alone. And the more you feel alone and the more you stand alone, the more that all these demons start popping their heads up in your life. So for these young guys, you've got to feel included.
Yeah, but Kevin,
the young guy, hit him.
Young guy Kevin, was this all charity or did it make sense business-wise?
Hell no, it wasn't charity.
No.
It wasn't charity.
No, it made sense business-wise. Yeah, I mean, we had, you know, the opportunity to, again, I mean, I think it is a situation where we want to come and help. I keep saying the good news, and Bryant.
It is all
the good news is, you know, he's an excellent dentist. I knew his dentistry was great. It would be different if you said this dentist that needs help. You know, I know he's not an ethical person. I know he's not a good clinician. You know, if Hollie called me then, we'd probably have a longer conversation as to, is this going to work? At that point, it'd be, we'd help him cover his office or see his emergencies. But it wouldn't be a situation where I'd say, we're going to do whatever we need to do to bring him into our office. But in our case, you know, this was an easy call of you know, we have a excellent dentist that needs help and we're perfectly willing to help him. And from a business decision, it worked great. I mean, I think Hollie made it a win-win for everybody. And like I said, she's got, I don't know how many family members she has, but there are a lot of them. And one's an attorney and one's you need landscaping. We got everything. So it was an easy decision.
So Kevin, you bought the 150 Cliffside Private Drive, Kingsport, Tennessee practice, and now you own 3 other offices. You own 2 in Kingsport and 1 in Johnson City. Are you the sole owner of all those?
Yes.
You don't have any partners?
No.
And well, I want you. So you have 3 locations. How many dentists you're a full-time general dentist,
right?
And how many employee dentists work for you?
8.
Okay, so talk about that, because when you go into the jungle, you don't when you go up to the gorillas and the chimpanzees and the orangutans, you got the 400-pound gorilla. And there's no democracy sitting around a table. And when I see an org chart, I mean, look at religion. there's not many religions that have 3 gods sitting on top, or 4 or 5. There's one God. In the military, you have one 5-star general. You don't have, but when you look at an org chart where there's 4 people that are equal owners, the staff always says you can't get anything done. That's the big reason they don't like it when the doctor's spouse works up front, because the doctor's saying go right, the spouse saying go left, and they're like, come on, we need an org chart. And the problem with all of these group practices is there's no 400-pound gorilla. So tell us your thoughts on why, how did you reach 400 pounds, and how does that work with the other 8 gorillas that are all doctors of everything?
I think in most cases it works well. It came out of, like I said, my dad's a dentist. I bought his practice and then just continued to grow it from there. Hollie helped me with the buying the other practices, but it was a situation where not having the partners available and just not being willing to share probably not being willing to share the decision making. But it works well. I mean, I think we're at the point that, partners I've never been against partners. I've never been a situation where, I want to own everything myself. It's just that's just how it's worked right now. Biggest thing.
Are you married?
I am.
Did you get a prenuptial on your marriage?
No.
Yeah. So the dentist, you bought your practice from your dad. I see the most stress of people actually going back to work with their dad or mom, and they've been in there 5 years. They have no contract, nothing in writing, and then all of a sudden, mom out of nowhere says, "Oh, that practice that was collecting $500,000 a year when you came out of dental school? Well, yeah, now it's doing $1 million, and I'm ready to retire, and it's worth $1 million. Give me $1 million, or you're not eating Thanksgiving dinner at my house again." I mean, it's just crazy.
Kevin, I think Kevin could tell you, like, you can be a family. This is what Kevin and I have in common, is you can have family owned and operated businesses, but that doesn't mean throw the baby out with the bathwater and don't have contracts. You still have to have contracts. You still have to be a business, but you can just work with the people who you trust the most and who would go to,
do you know where that term "throw the baby out with the bathwater" actually comes from?
I know you're going to tell me.
But you know where it really comes from? So when I was little, and we went to our grandparents' house in Parsons, Kansas, both sides lived there. They still had outdoor plumbing. They never called it an outhouse, and they called your bathroom indoor plumbing. And everybody took a bath on Saturday, and the man got to go first, and then the wife, and by the time the baby was in there, the water was black. So when you dumped out that black water, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. That is a true story, and that's, to this day, I still only shower on Saturdays. But it's genetic. It's Kansas. So Martin, you have 8 associate dentists. You're married. When people get married, you have children?
I do.
Even though, so you had children, so you assume that being a dentist was not a genetic disease you inherited from your dentist father, so you felt safe to procreate, that there was no,
Yeah. It's my wife and I started dating when we were 14.
Nice.
And we've been married for a long time, and she has absolutely nothing to do with any of the practices. So
how many kids you have?
2.
Any of them you think got the dental bug?
I hope not.
So just like you don't ever want to get a divorce with your wife, would you ever consider selling a partnership to these other 8 dentists and then risk the fact that it could end in divorce, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes and no. We've already set it up where we can have partnerships, but not voting share partnerships, not ownership partnerships.
And Wall Street's doing that all the time. Like, you look at someone like Mark Zuckerberg that might only own 20% of Facebook, but he owns 100% of the voting shares.
Right.
Yep.
And when people talk about what's fair or not fair, I don't know what to say with fair. I mean, when you see the cutest little zebra crossing a creek and a crocodile eats it, it's hard to believe in fair. I mean, this whole episode, it's just not fair what happened to David, who's going about minding his own business, and then all of this happens. Life is just terribly not fair, but you got to be prepared for it. Hollie, the only theme of my podcast for the 4 years ago when you were on to this day is that they always want to buy a CAD cam for $150,000, a laser for $150,000. They always know they're going to solve this upside down dental office with a $150,000 purchase. And I'm like, no, the only return on investment is a dental consultant. Every time you give $1 to a dental consultant, you'll get the dollar back plus a dime in that calendar year. And every time you give $150,000 to a CAD cam machine or a CBCT machine or a laser, it's very likely you'll never even get the dollar back ever. So, so my next question is to Kevin. I want him to answer this knowing that you're sitting within reach of slapping him. Has he fallen? Is he fallen for the big tech? What major technology, Kevin, have you signed off on?
He has it all. Be careful.
Well, I think one of it is to go back to your question about the burrs and the supplies and restricting that. I think what I see in dental offices is, and Hollie may correct me here, but I think we're kind of at that point. You're seeing millennials want to buy a practice to sell the practice. So they're obsessed with an EBITDA and supply percentages, and they don't invest in things like a consultant, like Hollie coming in. Hollie's worked with us for years, and how many times never, she sat down and said, we're going to get your supply cost of this. She wants it at that number, but it's not we're going to beat you all to death to give you one thing. We're going to work on case presentation. We're going to work on relationships. We're going to work on these kinds of things. And so, but then you see people that, they're just obsessed with getting this number down. So as far as the technology part, I want the best thing for our patients. So we offer IV sedation, implants, all the surgical options. And so we have cone beams, we got Cerax, we got Iteros. But I know in the long run or short run, that doesn't necessarily look great on a
P&L.
balance sheet or P&L or those kinds of things. But I'm not looking to turn around and sell this thing next week. I want to give our doctors the best thing they can to treat our patients, because we're in a small community. I see these people day in, day out. I know Dr. Guy wouldn't, but if we had a doctor that didn't treat our patients like we want them to be treated, then chances are I'm gonna get a phone call. I'm talking about living in Kansas. We're in East Tennessee. They may show up with a shotgun, but I see these people all day long, and so if something doesn't go right, I'm gonna hear about it. Somebody's gonna hear about it. So that's kind of. But yeah, we've got the technology, but
he's got the culture to support the technology. You got to have the culture.
Yeah, I when you said about the shut up the shotgun, Dennis sent me a joke the other day. It says, "Daddy, I have a new boyfriend," and Dad says, "Oh, good, I have a new gun." And the daughter says, "I'm not seeing the connection," and the dad says, "Hopefully, neither will the cops." But yeah, I do believe in CAD cams and CBCTs and all those things if it's toys in the bathtub that make the dentist want to play. I think they're all great for psychology. No one on earth can tell me that your chair-side milling machine can make a better crown than my lab man. It just can't. There's nothing you can do with a laser that I can't do with a $1 scalpel. But if buying a laser keeps you loving dentistry and wanting to go to work and play every day, then it's there. And I also agree that the number one killer of everything is just allowing toxic people to stay on your team, not backing your team when a toxic patient comes in, this is the most toxic patient story I've ever heard. David, you get the gold medal. I can't believe we've been here for an hour. I didn't want to ask this question till the very end, so that if you say pass, we'll just cut it. I guess a lot of people are wondering, this is he going to pay for these crimes? I mean, did he get in trouble? Did he go to court? Is he? I mean, they caught him at the scene, right?
Yeah, and we had.
And you don't have to answer any of this.
Several of us were eyewitnesses to everything that happened. But he first pled not guilty, and just finally, yesterday, there was a hearing where he waived the right to a jury trial and accepted a sentence of life in prison.
Without parole.
And the parole would happen maybe in 51 years. He'd be 115 by then.
And you knew this man for 18 years.
Oh, he knew this man for far
at least
longer
20,
than that.
yeah.
And can good people do bad things? And I mean, how do you wrap your mind around it? Can good people do bad things, or do bad things make you realize you were never good? How did I mean, you're a doctor. How do you wrap your mind around this?
Well, I'm a dentist, not a psychologist. But essentially, some people are very good at hiding part of their personality. I think he had more than one side to him. So it's kind of crazy. I'll never understand his mind, but I know that he knows what he did was horribly wrong, and he knows he has to pay for it, and that's the best thing.
I mean, Howard, here's what's crazy is, I mean, this gentleman was our family fix-it guy. I mean, he threw my kids in the swimming pool. He went to my church. He was David's friend, and their kids grew up together, and they went on field trips together. And he was David's repair guy in the practice. So there was so many levels of who this person was, and so many good behaviors, that just watching the social media fight that came down from this was absolutely astonishing. The amount of people that knew this other side to him versus the amount of people who knew the good side to who he was. So
other people were aware that he had this other side to him?
Apparently so.
All these stories started coming out. But for every person that had something bad to say about him, there was probably 10 that had something just amazing. He helped me. He took the same lady milk once a week because she was a shut-in. I mean, just
lots of acts of kindness. And
so much kindness too. And then there was these pieces of crazy.
Wow. Can I ask an even more personal question that I shouldn't even ask? Do you ever envision yourself going down to the prison and visiting him, or is that a wall that?
You know, I kind of wondered that over the last couple of days, especially once he was sentenced, and perhaps someday, but not anytime soon.
Yeah.
Never.
And and why do why were you able to come on the show and do a podcast about this? I mean, I would think this is when every dentist on earth would want to go down in their basement and lock the door. Why were you able to be transparent?
I did for 3 months, right? Because I got a contact from you back in, I think it was June, and I was not ready to do anything at the time. But over time, things have worked so well, and life has been so good to me. I've been blessed beyond my ability to imagine in the aftermath of what happened. So I think it's something worth sharing and benefit to others as well.
So the lesson of this whole show for you kids is that, my gosh, don't think in fear and scarcity. I mean, when you're a dentist, someday you're going to be a retired dentist, like Kevin's dad. I mean, you want a community. So when you're in dental school and you're backstabbing people so you can get a higher grade because you want accepted into ortho school. Okay, well, now you're an orthodontist and everybody just calls you the backstabber. I mean, these are your colleagues. These are your homies. You're going to need them. Every dentist that you trip on the way up the stairway, you're going to have to face when you're going back down the stairway. And my God, there's nothing cooler in Phoenix, Arizona when some dentist hits rock bottom. They're all there to help him. They're there at the funerals. Volunteering's a great place. I mean, it's a great place because The patient is the main concern, and all of a sudden you're now some dentist across the street's dental assistant, and just keep doing it. Keep. I know you're introverts. I know you're homebodies. I know you think the librarian was the wildest lady in the whole university, but she wasn't. There were more wild ladies than the librarian, and my God, live your love, and also look what happens when you have a dental consult. Hollie, do you live in Kingsport, Tennessee?
I do.
I thought you had money. I thought you'd be in Miami by now. I mean, my gosh, you're still.
I was in Charlotte for so long, Howard, but when I wanted to have a family, coming home was important to me. So I take the commuter airline to get to Charlotte, to get to wherever I'm at. I got to take the plane, the train, the automobile to get where I want to go. But it's the same with a consultant that it would be with a dentist, is having that sense of community and having that sense of belonging and being a part of study clubs or dental societies or, volunteering. All that's kind of ingrained in who I am as a human being, that I've got to have that so that I can feel like I belong.
So a couple questions. How do my homies contact you? David, if someone's not getting over a violent act. Kevin, if someone wants to know, how do you get 8 dentists to work under one roof? Hollie, if someone needs a dental consultant, how do they contact all you guys?
Call Hollie.
All right, that's I'm sure she's organized enough to handle it. Hollie, how do they reach you?
Hollie at BryantConsultants.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Bryant Consultants.
So Bryant is, I always give them, they're driving their car. They tell me all the time, the podcast, they love the podcast because they're free. I get great guests but they're on the treadmill or something. So Bryant, just think Bry, and an ant. Bryant. It's Bryant Consultants. Your logo should be an ant. You should put your beautiful face and hair on an adorable little ant, like Disney would do it, and be Hollie Bryant, so they remember that name. But just go to BryantConsultants.com, and we always do a transcript of every podcast, and when we post it on Dental Town under podcast for the transcript, because a lot of people prefer reading than listening. And by the way, the coolest dentist I ever met in my life, she was this young kid in the lecture, and everybody was teasing her to do her Howard impersonation. Anyway, long story short, she listened to all my podcasts on 2x, and she can absolutely sound like me at 2x speed. I thought that was hilarious. So go to Bryant Consultants. You can find all their contact number in the deal. And gentlemen, everyone, get a dental office consultant. Just have that. If you have. Every time I go to the physician and they need some image, they don't own a CBCT. They send me down the street to some imaging center, which took me 5 years to get that guy to him get a CBCT. So I don't need it. You don't need a chair. You know what you need? You need in the mafia. What did every Italian Sicilian mafiosa have? A consigliere, an attorney. And that was, if you're in the mafia, you would have a consigliere, and every dentist needs a dental consultant more than they need a toy. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was an honor to podcast interview you.
Thanks, Howard.
Thank you.